webinar on the SOS workshop, and thank you for taking the time out of your day to attend this session. I'm Steve Bistritz, developer of the SOS workshop and co-author of the best-selling sales book, Selling to the C-Suite. I'll be your host for today's webinar. On the screen now, you should see my contact information and also the Sell Excel website information. I welcome questions during this session. You should see an area on your control panel that allows you to submit a question. My main objective today is to provide you with an overview of the SOS workshop, to demonstrate the SOS tool, and most importantly, to communicate the value the SOS process can deliver to your salespeople and to your organization. So to honor your time today, for all of you who have logged in on time, I'm going to get started. As we get started, I'd like you to think back to your days as a salesperson and think about the one salesperson who was at the top of the ranking charts each quarter. Think about what made that salesperson stand out amongst all others. Because from my experience, the one thing that the most proficient salespeople instinctively and intuitively do on a consistent basis is to focus on the right deals. They seem to have their own built-in qualification system for accurately and effectively assessing their sales opportunities. They don't just chase every deal that's placed in front of them. However, that's clearly not a skill that every salesperson possesses. Objectively qualifying sales opportunities can be a difficult task, particularly if the approach to qualification is inconsistent or unstructured. And that's where we can help. My approach to opportunity management is called Sales Opportunity Snapshot, SOS for short. It focuses on helping professional salespeople analyze and manage their sales opportunities effectively and consistently in a structured fashion so that they can quickly close more deals. And SOS comes with a software tool that's salesperson friendly, easy to use, and delivers real value to the salesperson and the management team. And I'll demonstrate the use of that tool throughout today's presentation. So let's look at some more details about the SOS workshop. First of all, let's talk about the outcomes. Here are the outcomes that we expect salespeople to be able to achieve by the end of the workshop. And this is a one-day workshop. Again, quickly qualify each of their sales opportunities using the Opportunity Snapshot assessment. Secondly, effectively communicate the status of each sales opportunity to others in their organization using a visual, easy-to-use software tool. Third, use the concepts of influence and power to identify the key players associated with the sales opportunity. Fourth, select a competitive sales strategy that enables them to compete for each opportunity they pursue. And lastly, develop some meaningful actions that enable you to win the deal. And those actions should be coordinated with the strategy. So we're going to effectively communicate the status of the sales opportunity, look at the key players, create a sales strategy. And basically what we're trying to do, our overall objective, is to go from closing 3 out of 10 deals to closing 4 out of 7. And what's the importance of that number there, the number 7? Well, what we're going to be able to do with the Sales Opportunity Snapshot is effectively qualify out 3 of those 10 opportunities almost immediately. Those opportunities where you have no chance of winning, and focus on the 7 opportunities that you have the best chance of closing. So effectively, you're going from a 30% close rate to a 55% close rate, almost doubling your close rate by focusing on those right deals, and that's so important. So let's talk about this process, the SOS process. What we expect salespeople to do is come with some initial analysis, come to the workshop with a deal they want to focus on. And what we'll be doing is creating a 3-page opportunity plan for that deal. And they'll be able to use this process for all of the deals that they have in their territory. So again, they're going to focus on one, but they'll be able to apply this concept to all of the deals that they have in their territory. And sales managers will be able to look at those key deals and help their salespeople do a better job of closing them. So the first step is to qualify the opportunity, and you'll see the process we use to do that. Secondly, we're going to look at the political landscape. Who are the key players in the client organization? Those players that we need to meet, the players that we have not yet met, perhaps the players that we've been blocked from meeting. So we're going to be able to display on one piece of paper, on one chart, in one place, the key players in that client organization so that we can focus on people that we need to get to win the deal. We're going to set a competitive sales strategy. We're going to look at the sales strategies our competitors are using, perhaps. We're going to look at where we have the most effective solution and what sales strategy to put in place in order to implement that solution with the client. We're going to also develop an effective value proposition and some actions that enable us to close the deal. And we also have a test and review process. And we're going to show you at the end of today's session how to use that test and review process on a daily basis with the salespeople in your organization. So let's get started and talk about qualifying the sales opportunity, the first step in the SOS process. And what I tell salespeople is in each and every deal they're pursuing, they've got to ask themselves 3 compelling questions at multiple times during the sales campaign. And take a look at these questions, and you're going to see that salespeople have to internalize these questions. And we're going to get underneath the questions with some more details. But here are the 3 compelling questions. The first one is, should we pursue this opportunity? What's happening in the client environment that's creating the need for change, that's creating the need for our solution? Secondly, can we effectively compete for this opportunity? Do we have a solution that can be integrated into the client environment? And can we articulate the specific business value of our solution to client executives so that they understand the value of our solution and how we're positioned as opposed to our competitors? And thirdly, can we reasonably expect to win the deal? And this is the most important of those 3 compelling questions. Are we aligned with the most powerful people in the client organization regarding this sales opportunity? Because if we're not aligned with that executive, guess what? Your competitor probably is, and you're going to lose the deal. So let's take a look at what criteria are under each of these 3 compelling questions. And we've made it very simple. We've put 3 criteria within each one of those compelling questions. So in total, we'll have 9 criteria to examine to develop that opportunity snapshot. And here's what the snapshot looks like. Here's that first compelling question. And by the way, the colors are only aligned with the questions. So here you see the first 3 questions will be aligned with the color red, and it's basically, should we pursue this opportunity? First criteria is this project or application that we're pursuing associated with a key client business initiative? And here we're forcing salespeople to have some understanding of the business acumen as it relates to the client organization. What are the client's business drivers, the internal or external factors that create the need for change within the client organization? And then what are the initiatives associated with those drivers? So is this project or application associated with some key client business initiative? Criteria number 2 is, what's the client's ability to fund the project? Has the client earmarked funds for this particular project, or do they have access to discretionary funds for this project? And third, what's the client's driving reason to change? What's compelling the client to act? And as you're going to see as we go through these 9 factors or criteria, all criteria are not created equal. The criteria nearest the closest or closest to the center of the bullseye, or the snapshot, if you will, is the most important. So in this case, criteria number 3 is the most important of these 3 criteria. The second compelling question, aligned with the color blue, is, can we compete for this opportunity? And here criteria number 4 is, what's the viability of our solution as seen from the client's perspective? Criteria number 5 is, do we have the sales and implementation resources, either internally or with business partners who are combining to form a solution? Do we have the sales and implementation resources available to implement or install the solution? And 6, can we articulate, or have we articulated to the client, the specific business value of our solution? Again, can we compete for this opportunity? We can only compete if we're able to articulate the specific business value. And again, that criteria, being closest to the center, is most important of these 3 criteria. And then we look at the last compelling question, which is, can we reasonably expect to win this opportunity, associated with the color green? And criteria number 7 is, what's our ability to impact the client decision process, both the formal decision process and the informal decision process? Criteria number 8 is, what's our level of executive credibility and support? Do we have some level of executive credibility and support inside the client organization? And criteria number 9 is, what is our alignment with the relevant executive? Are we aligned with that relevant executive, the most powerful person in the client organization as it relates to this project or application, who can help us win the deal? And again, this criteria is the most important of these 3. So if you look at this snapshot in its totality, here's what it looks like. And very simply, I mean, we have 3 criteria associated with each of the 3 compelling questions, 9 criteria in total. And I will tell you that when we're in the SOS workshop, or when we do an SOS webinar in more detail, that salesperson understands those 9 criteria by the time we're finished articulating these criteria. They understand the importance of each, and they think about and start to internalize this process. And that's what we want them to do, to be able to apply this snapshot process to each of their sales opportunities. So again, 3 compelling questions, 3 criteria within each of those compelling questions, and the criteria closest to the center of the snapshot, criteria 3, 6, and 9, are the most important. So here's what we're going to ask salespeople to do for their sales opportunities. We're going to ask them to review each of those criteria, each of the 9 criteria, and to rate them as favorable, and in effect color them in, if both of the following conditions are met. Number 1, the information is known and comes from a flawless source within the client organization. It's not something they thought about in the elevator on the way up to discuss this with their sales manager. This is information that's known and comes from a flawless source within the client organization. They can point to where they received this information, where they obtained this information. And secondly, the information is positive and favorable to your company. So if both of those criteria are met, you can consider that criteria as favorable for this sales opportunity. And I'm going to give you an example. We asked them then in their table teams to do a simple activity, and I'm going to show you what it is. Here's the first activity we asked them to do as it relates to the opportunity assessment process. Here's in the upper left here, you see a snapshot with the criteria 1, 2, 5, and 8 colored in. So we asked them to say, what does this snapshot reveal about the sales opportunity? What actions would you take now in this sales campaign? And let's pretend you're a sales manager looking at this snapshot with your salesperson. Well, you could look at this snapshot and very quickly determine the following. First of all, we're probably at the beginning of a sales campaign. While it looks like the client has identified a business initiative and associated with this project or application, criteria number 1, and has the ability to fund the project, there's no driving reason to change, no compelling reason to act. Number 3 is not colored in. We appear to have the sales and implementation resources for this particular project, criteria number 5, but we have not yet identified and articulated the specific business value of our solution. We appear to have some level of executive credibility and support. Number 8 is colored in, but we don't have access to and we're not aligned with the relevant executive, criteria number 9. So none of the criteria closest to the center of the bullseye or the snapshot are colored in, 3, 6, and 9. So it appears we need to implement a number of actions to obtain some of this missing information. And that probably should be one of the focuses if this is early in a sales campaign. Now, if you're a sales manager and you're looking at this snapshot 6 months into a sales campaign, you might have to ask some tougher questions, like why are we still pursuing this application? Do we have any chance of winning it? And that's the kind of thing that this visual process enables the sales manager to do. So I'm going to show you what this looks like. This is just an indication to me to go now to the actual software tool that we use. And the software tool was actually developed on a Visual Basic platform within Excel. So you just have to have the Excel application installed on your personal computer in order to use this software tool, and nearly everybody has that. So we asked them to bring their laptops, obviously, to the workshop. And you can see here now that we have 3 snapshots. We can identify these snapshots by date, and we could actually add more snapshots if we need to. And you will see here on the left-hand side, I'm sorry, I'm using my cursor to indicate this, but you see the 3 compelling questions and each of the 9 criteria. We also have a little help button here so that, for example, we could take each of these 9 criteria and do a deeper dive on them, okay? You can see the first criteria is the client's business initiative, and there's other questions that we might ask to kind of prompt us into determining whether we should color in that particular criteria. And we can go down through each of these. They're all here. This is just a help screen, so I'm going to close this and show you how we go about entering the snapshot. So all we have to do is just color in. We click on the numbers, and I'm going to show you the same snapshot that we saw on that activity. So, and you could also show this and how it progresses as the sales campaign moves forward. So that at some future date, it might look like this. And we put the date in. And then thirdly, maybe finally, 3 months later, 6 months later, or whatever time frame, it might look something like this. We still might be missing some criteria here before we actually go out and close the deal. Now, we don't let the salesperson off the hook that easily. We also ask them for some additional information about criteria number 1, which is that client's business initiative. What's the initiative that's associated with this project or application? And then we ask them for some more detail about criteria 3, 6, and 9, those criteria that are closest to the center of the snapshot. We want them to tell us some more details. What's the client's driving reason to change? Explain it, okay? Articulate it here on this particular page. And also on the specific business value, what's the business value of our solution? And number 9, if we're coloring that in, we could actually identify the relevant executive, discuss how we obtained access and how we're aligned with that relevant executive. There's also, I forgot to mention, there's some demographic information at the top of this sheet. I'm not going to go into detail, but you can see it's fairly minimal so that it doesn't require a lot of filling in from the salesperson. Salespeople love this because it shows them how this sales campaign is progressing. Sales managers absolutely love it because they can ask some critical questions as the sales campaign is progressing, and they could ask some more detailed questions about what's not happening and what information they don't know and need to know so that they could close this deal. So you can see it's a very visual process. It's a very easy to use software tool. So I'm going to go back now to the PowerPoints we were discussing and go to the section on aligning with the political landscape, which is the next section we're going to be talking about. And in this section here, we're going to be talking about, first of all, defining that relevant executive. Who is the relevant executive in the client organization? So important. And how do you identify the relevant executive? Well, here's my definition for the relevant executive, and you'll see it's kind of unique and kind of different. When I first ask salespeople questions about the relevant executive and what they think I mean by it, I'll often get answers like it's the economic buyer, or it's the decision maker, it's the client that has the funds for the project. But here's my definition, very easy to understand and relate to. I'm going to let you read it, and then I'll discuss it in a little bit more detail. Okay, so simply put, it's the executive who stands to gain the most or lose the most as a result of the outcome of the project or application that's associated with your sales opportunity. So what we're asking those salespeople to do is sit on the other side of the desk and look at their sales opportunity from the client's perspective. And what executive in the client organization stands to gain the most or lose the most? Pretty easy. And you have to not only identify that executive, but you have to align with that executive if you want to close the deal. So important. Relevant executive, we talk about that in my Sell Excel workshop. I also stress it in my SOS workshop. So let's look at influence and how influence happens within a client organization. And to do that, I'm going to contrast the views of authority and influence. If we look at a traditional organizational structure, we look at players A, B, and C here, and basically they have equal authority. Authority given to them by their rank on the organization chart. Now, from an organization chart, we cannot tell influence. We can't tell which one of those players has influence over our sales opportunity. Because if you look at an influence structure, using that same organizational map, if you will, players A, B, and C have different levels of influence. And you might have player D there who's not even on the organization chart. Might be a technical assistant, an executive assistant, some other person in the client organization, lower level manager, for example, who might have a level of influence. You can also have player E there as shown up on the chart from outside the organization who has a level of influence over the sales opportunity. So what we're going to do is we're going to create an influence map. And this influence map has 3 layers in terms of the power. There's a center of power, the blue area in the middle. That's the area of most influence. And then you have the green and the kind of coming out from that is the second sphere, if you will. And then you have the area of yellow, which really has the least influence. So 3 levels of influence, if you will, that we can show on an influence map. And what we're going to do on that map is we're going to put these title blocks. And on the title blocks, we're also going to indicate the role that person has in the buying process, formal role, if any. Secondly, we're going to identify our relationship. In other words, is this person a sponsor? Are they a supporter? Are they neutral? Or maybe are they what we might call an enemy, okay, a sponsor for one of our competitors. And also, we're going to indicate the level of contact we've had with this individual. Again, just to show us a little bit about that particular person. We're also going to show on that title block, if we have not met the person, the fact that we do need to meet that person by putting a check there. And we can also indicate that our access has been blocked to that person. Now, when we look at influence and how people of influence are created within the client organization, or how do you identify the factors or indicators of influence, here's what you have to look at as we look at different key players. And these are what I call the indicators of influence, the building blocks of influence. Capabilities. How has this executive contributed to the success of the organization? What capabilities have they demonstrated? Secondly, connections. Who are they connected to? You often see that key players are connected to other key players of influence within the client organization. I can't tell you how many times I've seen this in so many different organizations that I've worked with. Third, what kind of vision does this executive have? Does this executive establish the vision and direction for the organization or for the department? And lastly, what value has this executive or key player created and delivered to the organization? So these are what I call the building blocks of influence. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my software tool, and now I'm going to actually go to the influence map. And you see the influence map here. And again, those 3 layers, if you will, blue in the center, green circle, and then the yellow circle. And this is actually divided into 8 different sectors. And that was a decision we made in terms of, well, how many departments can we talk about within the client organization, or how many areas? And they don't have to actually be departments. In fact, I've gone ahead and labeled 4 of these already for you. And you see that we have somebody from outside the organization, a consultant. And we have somebody from IT, maybe somebody from finance, somebody from operations. And I'm actually going to use what I call a dashboard, and I'm going to pull this in here so you can see it. Okay, and this dashboard helps us create these title blocks. So I'm going to just show you right here and right now, I'm going to build you an influence map for a particular sales opportunity right in front of you, show you how long it takes. It doesn't take very long. I'm going to identify some key players. I'll say Dave Powers. Dave Powers is my IT director, and he is actually an evaluator, and he's not really the decision maker, but our relationship is he's kind of a supporter, and we've had extensive contact with that person. So I'm going to actually create a title block. And you see, it puts the title block in the center of the influence map because it really doesn't know in what area it belongs. And then I have this little joystick down here, and I can move Dave Powers, and you're going to see I'm going to move him outside here because I'm going to say he doesn't have a lot of influence over this particular sales opportunities. Okay, so I'm going to create my next player, and that is my VP of Finance, and that's Benjamin Wu. And he is the VP of Finance. And his role is actually the approver. And his relationship with him, we think he's neutral, but we have not yet met him, and we do need to meet him. So I'm going to have that box checked. Create Benjamin Wu. See, I do that here. And it turns out that Benjamin Wu is actually the relevant executive for this particular sales opportunity. And I'm going to put him right there in that blue center of the influence map. I'm going to create another person, Nancy Harris. Nancy is my VP of Operations. And her role is actually, I'm going to say none of the above. She really doesn't have a formal role. We don't have a relationship with her, so I'm going to put neutral. We've not met her, and I'm going to say we do need to meet her, and our access to her has been blocked. So I'm going to say create new, put her there, move her up. Sorry, it's going to be out here. She actually has a level of significant influence as it relates to this particular sales opportunity. So I'm going to create her there. Then I'm going to create one more person, and that's a consultant, and that's Alston Brown. Anybody with the name of Alston has to be a consultant. Again, outside the organization, and we can identify this person. No formal role, no relationship, no contact. And let's say we need to meet him. Put him there, okay, and I'm going to move him down here, and I'm going to say that he has some level of influence, although it's not very much, okay. Now, I can also, on this influence map, show who influences who. So, for example, Alston Brown influences the IT director. Well, I'll say he influences Benjamin Wu, and he also influences Nancy Harris. Connect. Okay, so you see those connected, and I'll say also that Dave Powers influences Nancy Harris. Okay, just to show you the differences here. Okay, so we can show those connections on the organization chart, or on the influence map rather. It's not an organization chart. I want to stress that. Okay, because we can have people from outside the organization on that influence map. But you can see it only took me 3 or 4 minutes to create that influence map. And now we can see, who we need to meet within this organization. And sales managers can start asking some questions. Well, what's our plan to meet Benjamin Wu? He's the relevant executive here. He's the center of power, if you will. We've not yet met him. What's the plan for that? We're talking to Dave Powers. He's our key person. We see here extensive contact with Dave Powers, but we haven't had a lot of contact with a lot of other people. So the salesperson might be in a fur-lined rut and might not even know it. Okay, so that just shows you the kinds of things we can determine from the influence map. So easy to create, so easy to develop, and so user-friendly for the salesperson. So let me go back to the PowerPoint and start discussing the last couple of areas within the SOS workshop and the process. There are 3 different sales strategies we can implement within SOS. One is called direct, another is alter, and the third is segment. And we go into a lot of detail about each of these. I'm going to show you just for one of the sales strategies, for the direct strategy. Here's an example of the definition. It's a frontal approach where the client perceives you have superiority with your solution and your company. And oftentimes we're in a situation like that and can implement a direct strategy. But a direct strategy also presumes we have a clear and unique solution fit. We've had some relationship with this client in the past. We're the first on the scene for this new opportunity. They want an immediate or quick decision, and they want to implement it in a hurry. And there's places where we have that. So if that's the situation, we're not going to do a lot of different things. We're going to go frontal, if you will, on that particular client with our approach. And here's how you develop a competitive sales strategy. You can use that direct strategy when your solution completely addresses the client's buying criteria and delivers specific, compelling business value. And you can differentiate that value from your competitors. You implement an alter strategy when one of the following conditions exist. The client's buying criteria is not addressed by our solution, so we may have to alter our approach. Or a competitor has convinced the client that they have a solution that provides the best value. So we may have to do something a little bit differently. A segment strategy is when you can only address a portion of the client's buying criteria. So you may only be able to go after a portion of that particular opportunity that's in front of you within the client organization. So here are the steps you actually take to develop a sales strategy. Number one, you look at the client's business initiative and the buying criteria associated with it. You want to know which executive established that buying criteria. That's going to give you an idea of who that relevant executive is. Secondly, you want to look at your competitors and look at the strengths and weaknesses of their solution and their offerings, and the strengths and weaknesses of your solution. Third, you want to see if your competitors have implemented a sales strategy in the past for this opportunity or similar past opportunities, or perhaps even other opportunities that they're pursuing that you know about. And fourth, only then can you select your strategy by addressing the points that I just covered. So we can go back to the software tool. I'm going to show you page 3 of the 3-page opportunity plan. I call it pages, but they can go beyond a page. I just use that terminology. But here you see on this particular page, we're going to put our sales strategy in it. We're going to articulate our value proposition, just a space here to identify it. We'll talk a little bit about value proposition in just a minute. And then third, there's an area on here for action planning. So we're going to look at our competitors again. Our company, what's our solution? What's competitor number 1 solution? And we can identify those competitors here by name. What are the strengths of that competitor solution? What are the weaknesses? What's the probable strategy they'll implement, and then our company will win this deal if you can articulate that. The competition will win this deal if, and you can articulate that for each of these two competitors. So again, value proposition goes down here. I'm going to explain that in a little bit more detail. I wanted to show you the form that's used and the place in the software tool that's used. Action planning is the third piece that's on page 3 of this 3-page opportunity plan. So you can see when salespeople leave the workshop, they leave with a 3-page opportunity plan for a specific sales opportunity that each salesperson is pursuing. So at the end of this process, sales managers can start looking at these opportunity plans and start trying to help their salespeople close these deals. They also see very quickly where they should put their critical resources. Which opportunities do they have the best chance of winning? So let's look now at the last section of our PowerPoint. We're talking now about developing a value proposition and action plan. Developing a value proposition. For developing a customer-focused value proposition, there are 3 components of value. Component number 1 is you, your personal value, your background and experience that you bring to the client organization. Secondly, your company. What resources does your company have that you can apply to this particular opportunity beyond your solution? And third is the value of your solution. Now, most salespeople only look at criteria number 3 on this chart, the value of your company's solution. But if you look at these 3 components together, they differentiate you from your competitors. No other competitor can offer exactly these 3 components of value. Okay? So that's so important. So looking at creating the value proposition, you look at the client's breakthrough initiative, you look at these 3 components of value, and the overlap is your specific business value. And this is what you can articulate to the client as it relates to your solution. So when we're creating that value proposition, you look at what's important to the client first. Always put the client first. Secondly, how can we create value for them with our 3 components of value? And then how can you demonstrate your capability? Where have you done something like this in the past? You can ask yourself some additional questions, okay? Will the client perceive that our solution offers competitive advantage? And if you've articulated those 3 components of value, it should offer competitive advantage. Can you differentiate your solution from that of your competitors? Can you quantify the specific business value using the client's metrics? Is your value proposition provocative and compelling? Does it create a sense of urgency for the client to take immediate action? And let me give you a real quick example. Here's an example of a value proposition. I'll let you read it for just a second. This was an actual value proposition from one of the clients that I was dealing with. You'll be able to reduce annual travel expenses, creating an annual savings of $5.9 million by implementing our telepresence system. The investment is $5.3 million, but it'll be returned within 11 months. Now, what CFO, Chief Financial Officer, wouldn't relate to those savings and that return, an 11-month return on their investment? And you can give a proof source here. We implemented a similar solution at this company who began achieving an annual savings of $7.5 million in the first year. So you're going to be very specific. This is the template you use for the value proposition that you present to the client. Lastly, we're going to talk about developing comprehensive actions. And the actions really have a number of different parts to them. What needs to happen, What's the specific action that needs to take place? When will it happen? Who will do it? Who in the sales organization has the responsibility to implement this? And how will this either strengthen our position, obtain some missing information from the client, or soften any weaknesses? And actually, you could check all three boxes in some cases. So it may apply to all three of those areas. So that's really what the process looks like, the SOS process. We talked about opportunity assessment, creating a political map or influence map, if you will, identifying the strategy you'll use, the value proposition you'll implement, and the actions you'll put in place to close the deal. We actually have a testing process that we can use once these opportunity plans have been created. And here's the simple testing process. This is very simple because we're talking about a 3-page opportunity plan. And in this process, we have what we call opportunity owners. In other words, who owns the opportunity? It could be a salesperson or a sales team. And then we're going to have opportunity reviewers. We can have other people in the sales manager's organization who are the reviewers. We can have the sales manager who's a reviewer of this opportunity. But here's what's going to happen. It's a 3-phase process. Phase 1 is validate the plan. So in other words, the opportunity owners present the plan. The reviewers just listen and prepare questions that they might want to ask the opportunity owner. At the end of the 3 pages of the opportunity plan, the reviewers ask questions to clarify the plan. They don't challenge the plan per se. They're asking questions to clarify it and get a better understanding of some of the things that are happening within that sales opportunity. In the second phase of the plan, we ask them to go off separately, and the owners anticipate the challenges that the reviewers might come up with and prepare some recommendations to how they would improve the plan. And the reviewers do the same thing. They actually prepare challenges and recommendations. And during that questioning process in phase 1, the owners are going to start to recognize maybe some holes in their plan. And they want to go back and present then in phase 3 how they might improve their plan. You know, what kinds of challenges and recommendations did they come up with? How did they modify their opportunity plan based on some of the questions that came up? And then the reviewers are sitting back and looking and listening and then presenting any new ideas that they had that weren't covered by the opportunity owners as they improved their plan. So the result is at the end of this process, and this takes in total 45 minutes perhaps, because we're talking again about a 3-page opportunity plan. So the bottom line is the measurable outcomes of the SOS process. Sales managers are able to quickly and effectively assess the status of each sales opportunity, particularly those that are categorized as a complex sale, for example. They're going to provide guidance to the salespeople by asking some critical questions during the sales campaign, and also asking the salesperson, why are you still pursuing this opportunity? Do we have a chance of winning? Going back to those 3 compelling questions. Should we pursue this opportunity? Can we compete? Can we win? Next, they're going to improve their ability to forecast deals with a higher level of confidence. This is the sales manager, based on the SOS process and the SOS plans that they're seeing from their salespeople. Third, they're going to help the salespeople by improving their close rates, because they're going to have the salespeople focus on the deals they have the best chance of winning. And then they're going to be able to determine which sales opportunities should receive those critical resources that they have available to them based on the strength of individual SOS plans. So lots of measurable outcomes of the SOS process. This is the value that it delivers to the sales organization. So I'm basically going to end with this chart. I'll see if we have any questions out there. Okay, yeah, I do have one. Somebody asked, how much does the SOS tool cost? Well, I forgot to mention that the SOS tool comes with the SOS workshop. So when you pay for the workshop, when the workshop is delivered, the salespeople get the tool and they can use it, year after year. There's no annual charge for that particular SOS tool. Now, I have to tell you, we are in the process of developing a Microsoft Dynamics version of the tool. In fact, it's done. The customer that was implementing it with us is actually in the final phases of testing it. It's going to provide a seamless interface to that CRM tool being Microsoft Dynamics, and that will have an annual license fee associated with it. But the Excel tool does not have any license fee associated with it. Let me see if I see any other questions. No, there's no more questions. Well, I hope I answered for you your questions. I hope you received value from the webinar today, and I hope that we have a chance to deliver an SOS workshop into your organization. As you can hear, I'm pretty excited about the value that this workshop delivers. If you want additional information, you can contact me. My contact information is shown on the screen here. A replay of this webinar will also be available on my website, sellexcel.com. Thanks so much for attending today, and make it a great day.